Well, terminology is important. Semantics, in spite of how it sounds uh, when people talk about semantics, are actually important at times. They are relevant. They are worth discussing, and that's why I want to discuss what I'm going to discuss in this video. I've heard it said quite a few times, especially by people who are unabashedly dissident right, formerly alt-right, whatever that may mean to them or to anyone. But people who want to distinguish themselves from conservatives and from the mainstream right talk about themselves this way, and they say, and this is something I've heard them say, and I heard someone say this today, and it's like the umpteenth time I've heard this point be made, and I just wanted to address it because for some reason I thought the umpteen times I'd heard it previously, I hadn't really thought it worth discussing, but for some reason I just got argumentative. It elicited some argumentative streak in me. So here's what they say, and again, this is something that I think you might say is splitting hairs, and you might be right, but sometimes hairs are worth splitting. In which case, is calling them splitting hairs really the thing to the expression to use, right? Because metaphorically speaking, splitting hairs means trying to make distinctions where it's not important. Anyhow, here's what they say. They say, I'm not a conservative. Conservatives are retarded. I distinguish myself from conservatives because what do conservatives have to conserve? There's nothing left to conserve. Everything that was once worth conserving in our culture has been ruined, has been sullied, has been rendered unworthy. And so now we shouldn't have the mentality that we are conservatives because, and they also talk like, oh well, conservatives just are just 5 years behind liberals or 10 years behind liberals. Like 10 years from now or 5 years from now, conservatives will be saying trans rights are great, and drag queen story hour, that's a good wholesome American fun. That's what these people say that conservatives, quote unquote, will be saying 5 years from now, in let's say 2029. Let's just bump it ahead to 2024 because it's a couple days away. They're not saying it now, but they'll be saying it in the future. Now, there's a couple things I want to take aim at in this whole proposition. First of all, the idea. Let's look at let's take the second thing that I mentioned first. The idea that, well, conservatives are just 5 or 10 years behind liberals. They'll be saying everything that liberals are saying now. They'll be saying in 5 or 10 or 7 years, or just very soon they'll just be sounding like today's liberals. Well, whereas today's liberals will be saying something even more outrageous. So what they're essentially saying is all we're seeing happen is just a push further and further to the left, and conservatives keep conceding ground, and that's just going to continue. Well, look, I know a lot of people who would call themselves conservatives, who would be uh, just as against gay marriage now as they were when gay marriage was illegal. And plenty of them would be just as against abortion now, if not more so, you know, than they were before abortion became legal in this country. Because, and I say if not more so, because actually, like in the 60s and 70s, conservatives were kind of squishy on abortion. Now, Catholics were hardcore about abortion being wrong. But evangelical Protestants were kind of like, well, who's to say when life begins? I mean, I'm not saying that to be glib. That's really them's the facts. That was the way things were. And today, if anything, people who would call themselves conservative tend to be more emphatic about the evils of abortion. Okay, so I think this whole thing is a canard. I think this whole it's cool. I mean, it's like it's something that I heard Richard Spencer indulge in a lot, and now I don't really know what he's doing. I don't know, like he went from disparaging conservatives by saying that conservatives are just going to be liberals 5 years, or just going to be saying what liberals say now 5 years from now. He went from doing that to basically saying, well, I am a liberal. I believe in all the things that the mainstream left, that the neoliberal left believes in. I believe in all those things now, except I'm race conscious, which I've talked about before. How he has his whole pitch, his whole spiel has failed. This whole notion of, it's like it's hip and it's cool to attack quote unquote conservatives if you consider yourself to be, of the right but not a conservative. I just think that it's sorely lacking on the facts. When you look at, factually speaking, how conservatives, people who identify as conservatives, people who do not identify as dissident right or whatever. Now, the question of mass immigration, I think that a lot of conservatives are just as against mass immigration as people on the far right or the dissident right are. The difference is they don't the ones who would identify more as conservative and less as dissident right, they wouldn't go into the edgy territory of talking about race or talking about genetics or phenotypes or those kinds of things. But as far as saying, the ease with which they penetrate the border now is insane. I mean, you're really telling me that conservatives aren't saying that now? I mean, you're really telling me that they're just 5 years behind liberals? I mean, this is something that I think has been pretty static. From what I can recall, liberals have always been kind of like, hey, let people in. It's racist to enforce your border, policies. And that's not. I'm not saying that in a hyperbolic way. That's basically what liberals say. It's basically what I always can remember liberals saying. Now, people, the older left who knew that bringing in a ton of illegal immigrants means that wages go down for the working class. They're not really represented on the left anymore, even though they would hold a claim to supporting the poor and downtrodden and the working class folks, which was supposed to be and is still sort of supposed to be a liberal left thing to do. But as far as I can remember, it's liberals have always said it's the borders are like to enforce border policy is just fascist and racist, and yes, there are some like neocon types who say, well, they're coming here to work and we need the labor, and the sort of ones who support big business and corporations, and we know what we now the mask has definitely been ripped off of corporations. If corporations were once thought of as bastions of right-wing thought, which is the way people thought about them in the 80s, when supply-side economics was, I guess, a lot more popular than it is now on the right. But anyway, you have people like that, but the vast majority of people, red state people, would say, we've got to enforce the border. We've got to enforce the border. And these are people who would just call themselves conservative. Okay, so, border. On the issue of the border, conservatives are not 5 years behind liberals. On the issue of gay marriage, they are not 5 years behind liberals. On the issue of abortion, they are not 5 years behind liberals. You can find a whole bunch of other, consequential, cultural issues that is simply not the case with. Okay, so that's why that particular prong is false. Also, let's now go back and look at and consider the first thing that is said. We're about from dissident right types who just are just too cool to be tainted with the label of conservative, to be tainted with the label of to be lumped together with these hillbilly rednecks from red state America who go to church and go hunting and stuff. And yes, I think snobbery does play a major role in all of this, but that's just my impression. I guess you could challenge me on that if you wanted, but I don't think so. But anyway, let's look at the other thing that they say. They say there's nothing left to conserve. Everything has been ruined. And look, that's just patently false. Okay? And I don't want to say a pessimist, although I would have once embraced that label. I'm a realist in seeing how culture has gone to shit. Okay? I'm not deluded on that front. But the fact is, if you go beyond Twitter outrage, if you go beyond social media outrage posts, and if you actually go out and touch grass, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not gonna invoke that terrible phrase. But if you actually go out and look around, especially in smaller or medium-sized towns in the United States, what will you find? You will find that a lot of that those traditions that you think are dead aren't dead at all. You'll find that there are still a lot of people who believe in those wholesome traditions, like family, like community, um, you know, uh, the sort of things that they're talked about as being Norman Rockwell esque. Except I'm pretty sure Norman Rockwell was a damn liberal himself. So I'm not sure if it's really appropriate to talk about them as Norman Rockwell virtues. But you if you the fact is, if you get out there, you see that there are plenty of people, uh, you know, in the heartland or elsewhere, even in blue states. I mean, just, you know, people think that California is a blue state, or New York is a blue state, so just write off everybody who lives there. No, there are pockets of resistance in those states, and in many other places, um, where you have communities that, where old-fashioned values still hold sway. So this kind of hyperbole, this kind of indulgent hyperbole, um, which it seems to me is just rooted in hubris. It's rooted in this notion of, oh, I'm going to distinguish myself because I think, conservatives, ick. I don't want to. I'm not a conservative. What is there even left to conserve? I mean, yes. On the one hand, the culture has gone to shit. No denying that. That's mostly been because of forces from above. Forces from above have fostered the culture going to shit. But even with all of those forces from above, and all of their malevolent intentions, and all of their malevolent actions, they can't. They are not all encompassing, and so, and the things that could be talked about as, I don't even know if these types would call them good old-fashioned, values, because that might just be sounding too conservative to them. They would want to call them, like, they want to call themselves techno-futurists, or I don't know, something like that, something pretentious. But if they really mean, if what they're talking about, the culture, how their needs, if they're really claiming that the culture, there's nothing in the culture that's worth conserving anymore, then the implied notion there is that in the past there were things that were worth conserving. And what are those things? I mean, you get the impression it's wholesome family values, it's, traditional masculinity, traditional femininity, and so forth. And yes, those things still exist. They do. You don't, like, I don't know, like, there's, again, I'm not coming from the perspective of like, somebody who's just living in La La Land. I know the problems, but there are plenty of people who are still normal. There are, it's and yeah, maybe, if, like, well, I don't know. I won't be any more specific. I'm not going to go into any greater detail about it now, because this video is already a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. But that's I'll just finish up on that note. This whole idea that there's quote unquote nothing left to preserve, there's nothing left to conserve, is just silly. There is, and you miss it just because you pay too much attention. I think you spend too much time online, you spend too much time doom scrolling, you know, and fixating on outrage stories. And there's plenty to be outraged by. You know, there's plenty of ways in which we are in, you know, deep shit right now because of the machinations of our ruling class. That would be my take on things. That's the primary reason. Of course, you know, people are also prone to, you know, everybody has evil within, and everyone can be tempted, and all that is true as well. But my point is, there are things worth conserving. Therefore, calling oneself a conservative is not absurd. It's just foolish to think of things that way. So I know I'm cutting against the grain. I know probably people might just think I'm saying this to be, you know, to be oppositional. I've had that accusation leveled at me before, but anyway, I don't think I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. All right, if I am wrong, prove that I'm wrong. You know, tell me that I'm wrong. Just tell me how and why I'm wrong in the comments below. Thanks for watching.